welcome in our good friend, John McMullen, Johnnie Mac, and, of course, football on the 20s at JF McMullen covers the Eagles, the NFL. He's all over the place. Football 24/7, Birds 365 with Jody Mac, and he's kind enough to join us on a Tuesday. Johnnie Mac, how are you?
Doing well. How are you, Rich?
I am doing well. I think a lot of people maybe thought after this weekend I would be a little insufferable, right? The Giants get a win, the Yankees get a win, the Jets get a win. So I was due. So it was not a bad weekend for the New York sports fans. But we'll get
you
into it.
You got to wait for tonight.
Well, that's
for Yankees Red Sox.
Yeah, there it was. You just Dr. Killjoy right over there. Yeah, I can just see the scenario where Cole gets, gives up a couple hits early on, and then Boone just doesn't let him work it out, and then he just pulls them, and that'll be it for Aaron Boone. So,
I'm going the opposite direction. I'm going no offense. Cole gives you 7-8.
Oh, give me that.
Of solid pitching, but it's like a 1-1 game. And Chapman comes in and throws the slider, and it's over. There you go.
That's me wrestling and throwing stuff in the studio. We call that the white knuckler. What we didn't get on Sunday in Philly was a white knuckler. I mean, there are games in the NFL where you're going to have to score a lot of points, and it just happened to be one of those games. I never thought they had a chance to win that game. I didn't think it was going to be remotely close. But again, offensively, they did some nice things. I thought Hurts played well. I can get on him on a couple things, especially the fourth down play. You don't want to throw that out of bounds, but I think he'll grow, he'll mature. My problem, Johnnie Mac, is just defensively with this team. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, all right, it's all on Jonathan Gannon. But, come on, man. We were sold that they got some players. We know they're always void of talent with the linebacker spot. We were sold, all right, that's not a bad secondary. You got a good front. You'll get a pass rush. And then, boom, right? What are they trying to do? They're trying to take away the big play, but yet they've left themselves vulnerable to the run. 83 points in 2 weeks, close to 900 yards of total offense. I mean, listen, something's got to give here. So what's your assessment right now of the defense as a whole, and where does most of the fault lie?
My assessment is they have no linebackers, which we kind of knew. They're trying to limit big plays, which they've actually done very successfully, believe it or not, when you compare it to the rest of the league, passing plays. They're near the top. I think they're still number one as far as giving up explosive passing plays because they're playing a ton of too deep. They're trying to keep everything in front of them. And ultimately, I think it will get better starting this week because of the schedule. People are not giving the credit to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Dallas Cowboys as well. Those are two top five offenses, ultimately. Certainly Kansas City, they're going to be a top five offense, arguably the best offense. Dallas, I think, is going to be a top five offense, and we'll see how that shakes out as the year continues. So guess what? Kansas City's not on the schedule anymore, and Dallas is not on the schedule until Week 18. So you're going to start to even out those numbers. Now, while you say that, I mean, you don't want to give up 90% third down conversions, 6 out of 7 touchdown drives, because the last one, Patrick Mahomes just kneeled down for the win. That doesn't count. Michael Clay, his coordinator day at the Novacare Complex, said that's the first game he's ever been in with no punts. Right? Philadelphia didn't punt either. So, I mean, they were pretty effective offensively. I think you can't just overreact. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill dominated the football game,
yes,
and I don't think that should have surprised anybody.
Yeah, I look at this, though. And I get what you're saying, right? I totally get it. It's Kansas City's an exception to the rule, but 8 plays, 75 yards, 11 plays, 75 yards, 11 plays, 75 yards, 6 plays, 65 yards, 8 plays, 77. I mean, look, you don't have to worry about
that. But let me stop you, Rich. That's exactly what they wanted from the Eagles' perspective. They wanted those long drives. They wanted to force them to go the entire length of the field. And the plan was, oh, here's a false start. We'll back them up.
Right.
We'll get off the field.
Right.
Here's this, here's that. They make a mistake. That was actually the plan. They just couldn't get off the field on third down.
That's right.
Now, part of that was penalty-driven.
Yep.
One time Josh Sweat jumps off sides, turns a third and long into a third and short. And things like that affected, but that's what they wanted. They wanted those long drives. They wanted to force, hoping Patrick Mahomes would force the football. Remember, they were coming off a rare game where they turned it over a lot.
Yeah.
And they were trying to frustrate him, and it just didn't work.
No, listen, it didn't. But listen, 9 for 49 in penalties, right? Extremely undisciplined team. I mean, it seems like we see the same culprits every single solitary week. I mean, what do you do with Barnett?
Yeah, I mean, with Barnett, you're in a situation like Andrew Sandejo, who they had for a rare time. He had the reputation. So right there, I mean, if you look at that play, what are you going to do? I mean, that's a guy with a reputation hitting the superstar quarterback low. They're going to throw that flag all the time. So I said it before, with Derek Barnett, you either accept it or you don't. He's got the reputation now. Certainly when you're playing a Mahomes or somebody of that nature, you're more susceptible for getting flags like that to begin with. And then you add that part of it as well. The other stuff is, to me, the more important stuff. I mean, the league has made it one of their points of emphasis to call illegal men downfield on RPOs. The Eagles have to run a lot of RPOs. And when you don't get the football out on time, the offensive lineman is caught with his hands in the cookie jar. That's been a big issue. And then Andre Dillard took one touchdown off the board because of that, but it wasn't his fault. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, look, you got to be subtle when you're running a rub route. And if you get those arms extended, they're going to call it.
Ticky-tack. But you're right. Look, I hear you say 44 penalties in 4 games.
Yeah, and that's the point. Then you start getting the reputation, and that's the bad part. That's the bad part.
Right.
Something Raiders have had to deal with for years. If you think about all of the coaching changes with all the cities from Oakland to Los Angeles, back to Oakland to Las Vegas, the Raiders are always the most penalized team, right? Consistently. No matter who changes, coaches, players, everything, it's all because of reputation. Now the Eagles are getting a reputation for Derek Barnett. I talked about it on an individual basis. Now they're getting a reputation as a team, and you don't want that reputation. Let's just say that.
If you look at some of the players, the marquee players, right, that they have on this squad, well, first of all, I was a little surprised. Lane Johnson, personal reasons, that kind of came out of the blue. You're dealing with the injuries. We see the injury to Graham that's really hurting that run defense. We mentioned, I started the show off talking about the disappearing act of one Fletcher Cox. You have some of the injuries they're dealing with. I mean, can you chalk up, first of all, the Lane Johnson thing, did that kind of come out of left field?
Yeah, the Eagles were preparing to start Jack Driscoll at right guard and kick Landon Dickerson the left guard. That was the original plan. They got word about 2 hours before the game that Lane wasn't going to be able to play, and they still won't clarify what the issue is. So we don't know. We'll talk to Nick Sirianni again tomorrow. It's going to have to be some kind of clarification if Lane's not at practice, I would imagine, of what's going on there. So, yeah, that was a really late scratch, and it was actually pretty amazing. If you go back to week 1, 80% of the offensive line was gone. Only Jason Kelsey left standing. And they were not the reason they lost that game.
No.
They played pretty well with Andre Dillard at left tackle, Dickerson at left guard, Herbig at right guard. Driscoll had to kick out to right tackle. They were fine. Now, part of it was the game plan. They had a lot of quick throws. They went back to that week one mentality they had against Atlanta, getting the football out quickly. But overall, that group performed pretty well.
You know, so I have this argument with people. They love to say when a guy is a dominant player, right, like a Fletcher Cox, well, look at Aaron Donald get double-teamed. It's apples and oranges. I think it is a misconception how much people think he's getting double-teamed. 0 tackles, 1 pressure, and I think that's kind of being generous, right? So, again, when do you start to say, is it I'm disinterested or I'm being doubled? I mean, listen, it's alarming, man. It really is. It's alarming that the stats reveal just how poorly he's played along the defensive line. Now, again, as you alluded to, granted, they were up against one of the most potent offenses, really, in back-to-back weeks. He's played in 69% of defensive snaps. So he's the major reason Philadelphia's D-line basically looks like somewhat of a sieve over the last several weeks. I mean, that offensive line bullied him, man. So do you chalk it up to disinterested, getting old, double-teamed, or just he's in a slump? Where do we contribute this lack of production to or from?
It's probably a little bit of everything, but if you force me to pick one, I would think he's not happy with the new scheme. He did get double teamed, I think, 17 times. So 17 times Kansas City went with the double team against Fletcher Cox, which is a lot. It still gets double teamed more than most players. And certainly if you're an opposing offensive coordinator or offensive-minded head coach, if you ask Andy Reid, number one, and I've talked to him a lot over the years. When you play the Eagles, they say 91 and 55. Well, 55 is gone, Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox isn't playing like Fletcher Cox. So ultimately, that's going to change if it continues to go this way, and they'll start scheming for Javon Hargrave. But I don't think he likes this defense after years of being in Jim Schwartz's defense, which really played to his strengths. He's playing a little bit more out of position. They use a lot more 3-4 sort of mimic looks where he's playing 0 or 1 technique, which is silly to me, to be honest. So if you want to criticize Jonathan Gannon for something, I would say there's certain players, and I'll point out 3 specifically: Fletcher Cox, Ryan Kerrigan, who's been playing some 5 technique, which is insanity, if you ask me. And Darius Slay, too much zone. The one guy who played well defensively against the Chiefs for a very small period. They had Slay traveling with Tyreek Hill in that game, and they just stopped. And he didn't do anything against Slay. I think Slay gave up 2 receptions for 10 yards or something. And then they went back to their zone looks. And, obviously they have personnel issues. I think that's fair to say, especially on the back 7. The linebackers are just not good enough.
Nope.
The safeties are not good enough. I think Steve Nelson is fine, but he's not a star. So, they're just not very good on the back 7 from a personnel standpoint. You can tell Jonathan Gannon doesn't have a lot of confidence in them.
No, and it's funny, too. You watch Kansas City, every time they get goal line, it's going to be a shovel pass. It doesn't matter how it is. It's like years ago when New England used to like...
for 20-plus years for Andy Reid. Nobody can figure it out.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's like when New England, every time you saw like a tackle eligible, it was Mike Grable. You knew it was going to be a throw to him at the goal line, and yet you still can't figure it out. I mean, I think we both agree Hurts had a really nice game. I know you said this a couple weeks ago because I went back and I listened to some of our interviews where you said, listen, this season's really about finding out who he is. Well, they've got Carolina coming up, Tampa Bay, the Raiders. Those are tough games, man. I mean, listen, 1-6. Let's just say they're 1-6. Hurts plays better and well. He's getting on the same page with Smith. The offense is maybe moving a little bit. They decide to run the ball a little more. Okay, maybe you get rid of that record, and to a man, you hang your hat on the fact that, okay, we're seeing some signs of life here. I need to see it consistently with the quarterback, and it is amazing in the NFL, right? After 1 week, they beat the Falcons. Everyone was saying it was a 10-win team, and now they're 1-3, and it's, you know what? Just win 3 or 4 games. Don't even worry about it. Let's just see how the quarterback plays. We're not even concerned about winning the division. I mean, that's the NFL. So when you look at this team, when we're talking in 3 weeks, where do you think they're going to be at?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their schedule, we all knew it was top-heavy, so to speak.
Yep.
The tough games early. It gets easier late for them. I don't think anybody looked at their schedule. Pretty much everybody had them at 1-3. So I don't know why people are surprised they are where they are. I guess maybe the opening win that, got people excited. But, hey, I thought they would win one of those first 2 games, and I thought, honestly, it would be San Francisco, believe it or not. So I missed that. And then I thought they'd lose at Dallas, and they'd lose to Kansas City. And they actually played better than I expected against Kansas City, especially offensively, obviously, not defensively. But I thought they outplayed San Francisco. So if you're asking me, they've actually played better than I expected them to play, but they're right where I thought they would be. Now, here's the issue for me. A lot of the teams they're playing coming up, Carolina, this week, they're a little bit better than I expected.
Yep.
Las Vegas, a little bit better than I expected. Denver, better than I expected.
Mm-hmm. Chargers.
Some of these Chargers I thought would be pretty good, but maybe they're even a little bit better than I thought they were going to be. So all of these games you thought, well, maybe they can win this one. Now they're looking a lot tougher. So, yeah, it could get ugly from a record standpoint unless they tighten up some things on both sides of the football. And a lot of it has to do with penalties, as you mentioned, and then more consistency and better game planning from a young coaching staff. I mean, I've been telling everybody this. I've been screaming it from the top of the mountain since they hired the staff. There's going to be growing pains.
No doubt.
There's going to be growing pains, and nobody believed it for what it's just common sense. It happens to everybody. And with a group with this experience level, you knew it was coming.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I think by week 10, 11, then I think we can have the conversation a little more regarding the head coach going forward. Look, he's a rookie head coach. You got a young quarterback, so we'll save it for another day. I am curious to get your thoughts right now in the NFC, though. I'll tell you, the Rams, right, week to week, I love the Cardinals coming into the season, and I'm not going to sit here and say they exposed the Rams and Stafford in that second half, but I'll tell you, that was a very impressive win by a young Cardinal team. That quarterback is just playing lights-out football right now. I mean, were you surprised that Arizona was able to go on the road and beat the Rams like that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, they're obviously very explosive. But as you mentioned, I certainly would not have picked Arizona to beat the last undefeated team in the NFL. So you got to give them a lot of credit. But you also got to look in the mix. I mean, if Greg Joseph, I think, makes a 37-yard field goal in this, I mean, that's ridiculous. They lose that game against what has been a pretty bad football team. So, there's no great teams in the NFL at this stage. There's nobody that you look at and say, wow, this team's going to be much better than anybody else. And I think you see the ups and the downs. And, the Rams are beating Tampa Bay one week, and then they're losing to the Cardinals. And I think that's where we are. And hey, that makes things more exciting because you're going to see this each and every week. And it's going to be helter-skelter, and that's when the NFL is at its best.
No, I agree, and you mentioned that loss. That was, the win, I should say, was that game against the Vikings. And then Buffalo, we saw what Buffalo looks real impressive. in the AFC. I know I only got you for another moment or so. Listen, I'd be remiss. I got to ask you about this Urban Meyer situation. And I got to give Tyler, my producer, credit because he said this prior to the season, and he said he was deadpan serious. He said, "You know what? This guy's not even going to last a year." And look already what's going on. I mean, I can't recall ever a head coach deciding, you know what? I'm not flying back with the team. I'm just going to hang out.
Yeah, I mean, he's done. It's a matter of when.
Wow.
It's not if. He's done. You can't do that. You know, it's interesting. These college guys, I think where they struggle the most is to have these little fiefdoms in college towns around the country, and nobody pushes them. And, you know, a lot of people that cover the teams are just, you know, kids from the school, and everything's coach this and coach this, and genuflecting in front of them. And these guys get to the pro level, and it's like nobody cares. Nobody cares about that stuff. They're gonna ask the questions. They're gonna ask the difficult questions. Doesn't matter the size of the market. Carson Wentz has figured that out quickly in Indianapolis. Now Urban Meyer's figuring that out quickly in Jacksonville. You're a head coach of an NFL team, and you're not traveling back. I don't care what your excuse is. I don't care whose birthday it is. I don't care what side piece you have. That is not acceptable in this league. And, you know, if it wasn't the Cons, who Tony's too busy dealing with professional wrestling, he'd probably already be fired if it were a different city.
Oh, my goodness. Unbelievable. Johnnie Mac, you are a stand-up gentleman. We know anytime you go on the road, you certainly come back.
If I'm not coming back, you know, something's going on. So, you know, Urban has ruined it for all of us.
Yeah, he has. Unbelievable, this clown over there, down there in Florida. All right, pal. Always appreciate a couple moments.
All right, thanks, sir.
All right, you got it. Our guy, Johnnie Mac, quick timeout. I'll get into Meyer on the other side, 4:45.